our other Facebook groups in here before it's officially time to start the show. Get those wheels spinning. Still spinning 1 and 2. Second to sip coffee, brought to you by Patrick out there in Oahu Lion Coffee Company. Yep, I got the mug behind me too. Thank you, Patrick. He sent me a very massive care package last week, so I appreciate you, Patrick. I think Patrick has his meniscus surgery today too. Maybe wish him well. I think it's
and he's up. So
23rd.
Good morning.
Good morning. But hello, everybody. Welcome in. It is Monday morning, and man, what a fun week of football. Probably one of the better weeks of football of the year. And now we start to get the sadness that is the trickle down of the games. Only 3 meaningful football games left until Broncos fan can flush the season down the drain, but football fans in general can go into hibernation and start, getting ready for the pastime and starting planning their summer activities. And it's Monday morning. It's Broncos for breakfast. I'm Nick Kendell, joined by Scott. Scott, did you have a good weekend?
I did have a good weekend. Enjoyed watching some football. Like I said earlier, we've already been on air doing a different show. I'm done betting against the Bengals.
Yeah.
Done. I'm done. Flat out.
Joe Burrow, man.
I'm like 0 for 4 on picking them, and I've picked against them in each round last year. I picked them last week. That doesn't count. I picked against them every week last year. Picked against them against the Bills in Buffalo. I'm done. The Bengals are legit. They're for real, and they're getting better too. They're getting better.
Yeah, Jamar Chase is unbelievable. Joe Burrow is unbelievable. T. Higgins is probably the best, maybe one of the best number 2s. I mean, there's some good number 2s out there as well. I'm really hoping T. Higgins finds his way back in Jacksonville and he pairs back up with, not back in Jacksonville, but back with Trevor Lawrence. But I digress. Fun week. We're going to have Cincinnati at the Chiefs again for a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game, and then 49ers at Eagles. So good week of football, and does have some impact on the Broncos head coaching search. But first, let's say hello to some people coming in. We got Michael Ronquillo coming in out there in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Good morning to you, Michael. He says, good morning, Nick and Scott. On Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos with the hearts. We got Jeremy Sean saying, Scott, keep picking against them for one more week. Yeah, let's keep the jinx going.
Oh, I know. The worst thing I could do to you is pick you to win. That's it's hard to like think the world doesn't revolve around you when you're like 100% either right or wrong every time. It's hard not to be superstitious.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, what am I, 0-7 in Broncos games? It's like, I know I'm too smart to know that I have any impact on that, but like, come on, what's going on? Kevin Gray, good morning, Broncos country, Nick and Scott. I don't know what to think about Jim Caldwell. I would prefer Sean Payton. We should know by Thursday, Denver Broncos for life. I'm guessing today we're going to get an idea about the finalists for the interviews. And at some point, Scott and I will break it down, kind of our final guess here of who the finalists will be. We got the DWI guys coming in saying, good afternoon, gents in Broncos country. Only one interview needed. Get Sean Payton here ASAP. We'll see what happens. I think he's going to be first lined up. Dave Glassman with the hearts. Good to see you. We also got our guy Colin Wood saying, we gave up so much to get Russ that I just can't see up giving any more draft choices for a coach. Go ahead, Scott. Sidejar.
This whole discussion is just wearing me out. I mean, It really is. Y'all know I'm in here every day.
Yeah.
We do multiple shows a week. So I'm in here in this discussion. How many morning shows do we have now? Monday,
3.
Tuesday,
Thursday,
Friday, 11 shows. The draft pick for a coach, just because it's a different way of doing business, doesn't mean it's the wrong way of doing business. Okay? Yeah. When we start talking about the idea of giving up a draft pick, I saw a comment last night before we went on. I'm like, this is the problem I have, Nick. The comment was, well, if we hire this guy, we'll probably suck, but at least we'll still have our draft picks. What are you doing here? What are you trying to do? Yeah. Are you trying to win or not? Well, we'll be a bad team, but we got draft picks. Who cares?
Especially if the Niners keep on winning. I mean, that's going to be pick 29 or 30. 28, 29, or 30 now.
If I go to, I look it up all the time for talking about, how New Orleans was before and where the Falcons are, where the Lions are, where the Tampa Bay is, where these teams are, and where their winning percentage is. You know what teams in the bottom third winning percentage of NFL history have in common? A bleep ton of high draft picks. Lots of them. Yeah. You know what else they have in common? Bad coaching, bad administration, bad ownership. The draft picks are secondary to those things. If you don't have the coaching, You should know this better than anyone. It doesn't matter who you draft. It doesn't matter. So
unless
yes,
you hit on a
there's
god
line.
quarterback. Yeah,
There is a line.
I agree
There's
with
a
you.
line where you can give up too much. Obviously, there's a line. It's not binary. But this whole discussion of I don't want to give up any draft picks to get the right coach. Now, you may not think Sean Payton's a good coach. That's one thing. Then talk to me about that. Talk to me about I don't want him as a coach because throw the draft picks out the window, because guess what you've been doing for the last 6 years? Throwing the draft picks out the window. You've been wasting them. Nick, we had this discussion about Pat Surtain. Fired up now. The coffee is hitting full stream. Thank you. You were talking about the value of a corner. Pat Surtain will never be as valuable from a cost play perspective as he was this year. Never.
No.
He was an all-pro in the second year of a rookie contract. You've got one more season of him being cheap. 2 more seasons of him being cheap. His fifth-year option is going to escalate wildly. Yeah. He's going to go from $3 million to $12 million. After that, he's going to be $20 million. He will never be as valuable as he was this year. You've won 12 games with him. The coaching, we talk about it all the time. Coaching, but we don't believe it. I'd rather have the draft pick. Oh, I'm worn out. It's wearing me out.
Okay, let's pivot on this conversation a little bit. I feel you, Scott. We're going to get some news here soon. It's a lot to talk about. But I agree with you in general. Let's say the Broncos had the first overall draft pick this cycle. Would you give up number 1 overall for Sean Payton?
Depends on who's there. In this draft, maybe.
You could probably trade out of that and then end up trading one of those picks that you get from that. I'm guessing 1 overall probably more valuable.
If I had, and the term generational gets used way, way too often. If Trevor Lawrence is there, probably not. Okay? If I've got big questions about Bryce Young in this draft, probably. I would probably rather have Sean Payton than anybody in this draft class. Probably.
Interesting.
The coach that you're going to have for 10 to 15 years is much more important than all but a dozen picks in the history of this game.
Yeah.
God, it's killing me.
I'll push back a little bit because Sean Payton coming here and being amazing is not a guarantee. There are no guarantees.
Like I said, if you want to talk about, I don't want Sean Payton because we can have that discussion.
Yeah.
But I'm operating under, people are operating under the, when they're making this statement, it's about, I don't want to give up this for a coach, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You've been getting your draft picks for the last 6 years. Yeah. All you're doing is losing and then trading them away for more draft picks. It's insanity.
I will say that if the Broncos do not end up with Sean Payton, you will hear from a lot of people that the Broncos, it wasn't worth it to give up the draft capital.
Again, there's a line.
But after they miss out on Sean Payton, I agree with you. There is a line. I don't want to give up 2024 first because right now the Russell Wilson question still lingers, even though we have better feelings about how he played down the stretch. Still questions with that one. I don't want to give it 2024 first, but I will say we are going to definitely hear from people covering the Broncos and connected to the team that if they don't get Sean Payton,
the compensation package was too much, and we'll all lap it up. Oh, good. It was too much. I don't want to give up draft picks. So. I'd rather get the wrong guy and keep losing because, hey, we've got our draft picks. Adam, I have to sit in the background of, I'm on 3 shows out of the 11. I have to sit in the background on 8 of these. And sometimes I'll jump in and type, but I don't want to take away from the show. So I have to sit back there. It's why I don't listen to sports talk radio. If I can't weigh in and correct some of these things, I just get frustrated. So this is 8 out of 11 shows a week that I have to sit back there and go, my God, people, where are your priorities?
That's why they paired Scott with me, because if he was sitting on the back on all my shows, he'd be jumping out of his skin. But he can correct and jump in and correct me much more. He needs to. Gary Palmer coming in 1999. Thank you so much, Gary. Good to see you. Good morning, Nick and Scott. You said it, Scott. Denver Broncos for life. Well, thank you so much, Gary. And you said it with the support in there, keeping the lights on these Monday morning shows. And if you guys aren't like Gary Palmer, where you can come in and be very gracious with that 1999 super on Facebook or YouTube, click the thumbs up. It's cheap. It takes 1 second to do. We appreciate the interaction. Obviously, we want to earn those thumbs up, but we got more viewers in here than thumbs up by a big margin. Click the thumbs up. It helps a lot. Bradley Conger coming in saying, good morning, Broncos country. Can we put the Dan Quinn head coach possibility to rest now? Scott, with the Cowboys losing yesterday to the 49ers, I'm going to argue that actually the chances of Dan Quinn being the next head coach for the Broncos increased and increased rather dramatically. I think if the Cowboys were moving on and Dan Quinn had to focus on the task at hand rather than the secondary interview, he would probably be less likely to be hired. But now that he's out, he can focus on that. I think it'd be pretty shocking if the Broncos didn't bring him in for a second interview, especially given he wasn't the reason that team lost yesterday. That Cowboys defense was playing well. Now, yes, did have some boneheaded penalties. Yes, Trevon Diggs dropped a interception that would have changed the course of the game. It was the one I think he dropped it in the red zone, and it was the same drive that the 49ers scored their go-ahead touchdown. Tie game there. But what do you think about Dan Quinn and the impact of this Cowboys versus 49ers game?
The impact of the game, again, I think Dan Quinn's candidacy has done nothing but increase over the course of the playoffs. And part of it for me is the defense has played well. Okay, they've been playing well the last couple of years. The other part of it is you look at the impact he has on all the players. I mean, there was a video going around Twitter where, he's just inside the stadium, where people come in on their way to the locker room, and he's standing there, and every one of the players going by him, offense, defense, are giving him these giant bear hugs. I'm like, and is he the right guy to be good cop while someone else plays bad cop? Is that it, Nick? Where you've got your head coach is, the mean old Coach Boone from Remember the Titans, and you've got your guy to love him up afterwards. That's a real thing. I mean, yeah. You've got to have that dynamic.
Sugar and spice.
You've got to have somebody in there that's willing to drop the hammer, and then that's someone that is, we love this guy, and you can't be both. But watching the way his players respond to him, offense or defense, knowing that he did a good job in Atlanta despite his shortcomings, which are correctable through experience. Yes, you hope these guys learn something and move on. I think Dan Quinn is a very good candidate. That said, I love Dan Quinn, the person. I really do. And I'm in here again every day of the week, sometimes twice, and no one in here wants Dan Quinn. I don't want to see someone I really like be torn apart by another group of people I really like. It's kind of like when Christian Pulisic went to Chelsea. My favorite American player goes to my favorite team. That's an uncomfortable situation for me. So I don't necessarily want to see Dan Quinn come to Denver because there's still a good chance that he could fail. They all do eventually.
Yeah.
And nobody wants him here. I don't want that for him. I don't. I'd rather see him get promoted in Dallas where they love him.
Yeah. And I will say, for Dan Quinn, for myself speaking, my vitriol comes from being peed on and told it's rain, from Dan Quinn being the same caliber coaching candidate as Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton. That's just a lie. That's baloney. Don't tell me that. Now, if you don't miss out on those two guys and Dan Quinn's the one that is the next best one, sure. But the fact that you said you're going for this big swing, and now that after, we might not get Jim Harbaugh, we might not get Sean Payton. But also this big swing that is Dan Quinn. No, but baloney.
Yeah, they're not going to say they missed, but if you're swinging at Sean Payton, you're swinging at those are big swings. Yes. How do you sell that? Don't sell me that Dan Quinn was your big swing. Dan Quinn was a good fallback option.
Very good.
Big swing was Harbaugh or Payton, and if you missed, you missed. Mm-hmm. But at least you went after him.
Yep.
They have a choice in this too, right?
Yep. Epic Gamer coming in $10. Epic Gamer's been coming in supporting us consistently here as of late, so we appreciate you, Epic Gamer. More like the Epic contributor, saying couldn't be more happy that the Cowboys lost. Yeah, happy to see the Cowboys lose. It is bittersweet because the Broncos' first-round draft pick that they currently own gets further pushed down. It's pretty frustrating to see that every time the Broncos have a team's high first-round pick, that team seems to just all of a sudden turn on a switch and go on an absolute tear. Saw it last year with the Rams, seen it this year with the 49ers, but it is what it is. Patrick coming in saying, got to go for now, surgery time. I will watch afterwards. Well, Patrick, we appreciate you coming in and saying hello. Good luck to you. And I'm sure it will be all fine. I know you're going to be on the injury list here for a bit, but we got plenty of football coverage to tide you over and some good content and games yet to come. So good luck, Patrick. Yeah. We'll be thinking of you.
May that knee surgery be as routine as it's supposed to be, and look forward to a good recovery, and hopefully you'll have plenty of time to join us in the chat. So appreciate everything you do for the show, Patrick, and God bless.
Absolutely out there in Hawaii, out there in Oahu. We appreciate you. We also got Bama X coming in saying good morning and happy Monday, Broncos country. Good to see you, Bama X. We appreciate you. I see that Deanna Hendry is also coming in. I'm going to lose my place here in the chat, but that's okay because we want to say hello to Deanna Hendry. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I was waiting for Deanna as you were working your way down.
Deanna comes in and says, morning, Nick and Scott. I agree with you, Scott. I'm hoping we get Sean Payton. Hopefully hear who they choose soon. We should get the finalist here. I think today I'd be shocked if we didn't get the list of the finalists. Now, I am curious, is the finalist going to be, are we going to get everybody that's announced as a finalist, or is it going to be one at a time that we're announcing the finalists? Because I have a suspicion that everything, I mean, we've heard, I think Schefter mentioned yesterday, everything revolves around Sean Payton and what happens with Sean Payton, then the rest of the positions will probably fill out. For the Broncos, with this head coaching interview, Mike Kliss said it, we could have 1 to 3 interviews for this final candidacy. 4, maybe 4, but 5. Yeah, keep adding it up. But I think it'll probably be 1 to 3. But I'm thinking we're not going to list, okay, the Broncos' final 3 candidates are X, Y, and Z. No, I think it's we're bringing in Sean Payton. And if Sean Payton says yes, we brought in our one person. If Sean Payton says no, then we're going to see 2 and 3 after that. So I don't think we're going to get the announcement of the finalists. I think it's a Sean, yes, no. Okay, then the final 2 candidates.
Yeah, we're operating under the assumption that they're going to choose you if you offer them.
Yeah.
That's a very narrow-minded, frankly, arrogant assumption. They might not.
Yeah.
So every single one of these guys you're bringing in are interviewing other places too. So again, last year, Denver, I felt really had their choice. It just felt that way. It felt like everybody was kind of waiting on what the Broncos were going to do. This year, maybe not so much. Maybe it's a little different where some guys are like, maybe I want to take a look at some of these other open positions. So again, 1 to 3, people say could be, and all of a sudden it's reported as fact. Oh, well, there's going to be 3 finalists. That's what Kliss said. Kliss said maybe, might, could be, would be, should be. It could end up being 4. I mean, I would definitely bring in DeMeco Ryans. Maybe DeMeco Ryans wasn't available at the time, and now he is. So the thing is, nobody at Dove Valley is talking. They're not going to show their hands on this thing because, one, they don't want to tip their hands for several reasons, the least of which is we don't want to be seen like we got our 5th choice.
Yeah.
They're not going to make an offer to a guy unless they think he's going to accept it.
Yeah.
They're going to offer 1 officially, and he's going to take it, and we got our guy all along.
100%. Just like in the draft, we always got the number 1 guy on our board. And
more like recruiting.
Yeah.
More like recruiting where they stand up on signing day and say, oh, we got all of our targets. We got this guy, and this guy. And then all the fans are calling me an idiot because I ranked their class low. What do you expect them to say? It's not a scouting contest. It's a recruiting contest.
Yeah.
They didn't go after that guy because I knew they couldn't get him.
100%. Unless you're in Colorado and you offer everybody, but you're getting some guys these days. Alejandro coming in saying, good morning. Who do y'all think will get the job? My gut still says it's going to be Dan Quinn, but a lot of people are saying Sean Payton. So I don't know. Maybe I'm guarding myself because Sean Payton's the guy who I'd like the most out of this cycle. As long as you're not giving up the 2024 first, I do have to line there. I'd rather give up the year 1 and both 3s this year rather than giving up the 2024 first. But we'll see. What do you think, Scott? I mean, we could say that for the end of the show. Is your head and heart and gut changed at all?
I don't know. It feels to me like things are lining up okay for Sean Payton.
If he takes the job. I
think they've had an agreement in principle with the Saints or they wouldn't have gone through the interview process. He's coming in for a second interview. Stable ownership, which they've, I don't believe everything in what they say. But again, I've talked about this before, quarterback this, quarterback that. And in that interview, Colin Cowherd said, or the 2 most important factors, leading the witness, like you like to say, Nick, is ownership and the quarterback, right? And, Sean Payton was like, yeah, but ownership is much more important because, the quarterback's fairly interchangeable. Russ as your quarterback is basically a 1-year guarantee. This is this could be a long-term project. Colin may have asked, I'm not sure who it was, but how many coaches you get for 10 to 15 years? Well, hopefully that's what you're doing. And the New Orleans Saints got Sean Payton for 15 years. And I promise you, they were in worse situation when they hired Sean Payton than the Denver Broncos are now. I promise you. One of the worst, if not the worst franchise in the NFL. And, I grew up in Atlanta. It's a big rival. I say that I'm biased. It doesn't mean I'm wrong. If they're not worse, they're bottom 3, along with the Falcons, Buccaneers, Lions, Browns. they're in there.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's going towards Peyton. I feel like it's going to work out, and I hope it does for Broncos country, because he's a hell of a coach, and you're going to see improvement right away.
Yeah.
Talk about a draft pick that's one player. He's going to make 53 guys better.
And he's somebody who can hold Russell Wilson accountable, and I think Russell Wilson would have buy-in as well. Sean Payton comes in and says, this is what I think you do well at. I think Russell Wilson's going to click his heels and say, yes, sir. I don't think there's going to be any other way around it.
He's coached him at the Pro Bowl. They know each other, and Sean Payton has the ability to say, to lead him for one. And the other thing, he'll have the clout to say, if you don't like it, GTF. Yeah. You're gone. If you want to do it your way, fine. Go do it your way over with the practice squad.
Yeah.
And he'll have the backing from the ownership who hired him. Yep. He will have Greg Penner's backing to do this and do the things that he wants to do his way. Now, if your argument is, I don't like the way he does things, I'm listening. I am. Yeah. That's a different conversation than I don't want to give up a player for, which is a draft pick. All it is a player. I don't want to give up a player for a coach who could make 53 other players better. I'm not having that.
Not anymore. Philip coming in. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you, Philip. Darius saying good morning, folks. Hoping we have a new head coach by Thursday. The rumors are exhausting. Well, don't worry. We have free agents rumors just around the corner here. Oh, sorry, Scott.
Real quick, because String Guy, I wasn't going to call you out. But yes, before the chat started, it was your comment yesterday. I appreciate you owning up to this. He says it wasn't intended as, I'm just sick of this coaching discussion. And as you could tell, I am too. And it's not so much the discussion, but also the way everybody's turning on each other in the chat. There's negatives around all of these. And just because you support one guy over another doesn't make your point bad. You're a moron to think Sean Payton, he's done this, so you're a moron. DeMeco Ryans only has 2 years in the league. You're a moron. Dan Quinn always loses this. You're a moron. I'm fed up. I am.
Once you accept that everybody's a moron,
doesn't mean I don't love you. But the way you put it in your chat was basically, if we hire Rosberg, we'll suck, but at least we'll have our pick. And you saw what it did to me.
You just have to accept that everybody's a moron. I am a moron. Scott's a moron. He, she, they, moron. Once we come down to that level, know that we know nothing, then we're good. Fine trading draft pick for him, says Sting Guy. Well, that's good to hear, and I think the Broncos are as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be this far down the interview cycle. Jason O'Neill saying, good morning. This isn't Broncos related, but I was curious if you guys thought the Bills would blow up the team after another disappointing playoff effort. Thoughts on Sean Payton? I think the Bills could blow it up somewhat. They're a team they got some contracts they're going to have to reckon with. Also, I'm curious to see what happens with the offensive staff. I'm probably a little bit, I don't see Sean McDermott throwing their offensive staff away, but definitely a step down after they lost Brian Daboll last year. So curious, and thoughts on Sean Payton. If the Broncos can get him, he'd be great. I don't think his style of play that he used with Drew Brees would work with Russell Wilson, but Sean Payton, I think, would know that as well and change what he does. And he's worked with Teddy Bridgewater, granted, very small sample size, worked with Jameis Winston. I do hope that he's not interested in bringing Taysom Hill to Denver. I don't know. That's one thing.
Not on that contract, for God's sakes.
What the hell is that? Crazy.
No, I mean, Taysom Hill is a gadget player who was getting, top tier quarterback money. But again, 22 games since, in the last 4 years or so with Jameis Winston, who was an enigma in Tampa. Kind of a Drew Lock, so to speak, with, much more with Drew Lock plus,
much better.
Throws for 40 touchdowns, 35 interceptions, 5,000 yards. Decision-making, comes in and wins and wins big with New Orleans before getting hurt. Teddy Bridgewater, after he tore up his knee horribly in Minnesota, was mid-level at best starter, probably best as a veteran backup type. And Taysom Hill, gadget quarterback. With those three starting in 22 games, that's a decent sample size. 17-5.
That's pretty damn good.
17-5.
Yeah.
That did more for Sean Payton than Drew Brees, than just Drew Brees. So it's been he should have gotten a cut of the Carolina Panthers contract to Teddy Bridgewater, because that $60 million contract, about $40 million of that was Sean Payton.
Yeah, very good for Sean. And we also got Ernie coming in saying, hello, Nick and Scott, Broncos country only. Well, we got Wednesday's shows now with Coast to Coast football that we're doing more draft and NFL stuff in general. So don't hang out with us then, Ernie. Otherwise, it's not going to be Broncos only, but we appreciate you coming in. Mark Lendemode coming in. Howdy, Nick and Scott and Broncos country. The best Broncos for breakfast hosts. We're the only Broncos for breakfast hosts, but we appreciate you so much coming in. We got Clinton Watson coming in with the super sticker. Thank you so much, Clinton. Happy Monday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope that coffee is kicking in and you're enjoying yourself. And have a good week. It's going to be a interesting week this week. It's the first. I always hate to. I had Monday off last week, Martin Luther King Day, working for a research institute, et cetera, et cetera. But full week this week. It's going to be a long one. I'm a little bit concerned about that. But thank you so much, Clinton. Greg Smith, top of the morning to you. Good to see you, Craig. Always appreciate you coming in and supporting us and saying hello. Hope things are going well. I know that you lost your mother recently. Been in my thoughts, and hope that service and everything like that went well, and holidays weren't too rough for you.
So absolutely, Greg, appreciate you being in here and being a friend to the rest of the community. I see the way you comment to everybody else too. It's a big part of what makes this group very special to us. Adam comes in on Facebook. He says, if we get a defensive coach, we might as well have kept Fangio. I thought the whole point was to get an offensive mind to fix Russ. Not necessarily. I don't think necessarily it was defense. I just think that Fangio wasn't the right guy. He was more of a, I don't know how many of you are close enough to my age to remember Buddy Ryan. He was so defense that he actually started a fight with his own offensive coordinator on the sidelines, but he'd take it to an us versus them mentality. He was a defensive coach that needed to stay a defensive coach.
Yeah.
Whereas DeMeco Ryans, Dan Quinn, those are very, very different personalities. Those are leaders. They're interested in the whole and not just their side of the ball. He's an old curmudgeon-y defensive coach that needs to be a defensive coach, not be in charge of an entire program.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. CC coming in with some news, and I just verified it on Twitter. So Jeff Duncan, who's somebody he wrote a Sean Payton, Drew Brees book out there and works for NOLA.com, covering all Louisiana football aspects. And he says that just reported that Sean Payton is scheduled for a second interview in Denver on Wednesday. So there's your domino number one as far as your second round of coaches. Sean Payton, the Broncos originally flew out to Los Angeles and interviewed him and Raheem Morris, both in Los Angeles in the same hotel, one after the other. Now we have Sean Payton coming to Denver on Wednesday. I believe Sean Payton's also meeting with Carolina today out there. I know that Carolina has gotten in trouble with some sort of interview process with Sean Payton, but either way, some breaking news there confirmed. Thank you for the heads up on that, CC. We appreciate you, because when things go live, kind of hard to hang out with you guys, read the chat, and keep up on the breaking news. So that's some breaking news, I guess. Sean Payton is going to be interviewing with the Broncos in Denver on Wednesday. There's your first of the second round of interview candidates.
As expected. Yeah. After that, it becomes a little bit more of a question. Is it David Shaw? Is he really one of the three finalists? That still strikes me as a little odd. Again, I would pencil Dan Quinn in. He should be one of those guys. I would absolutely have DeMeco Ryans. I don't know if it's going to be him. Jim Caldwell to me. So what is Jim Caldwell to you? Give me 3 words to sum up his candidacy.
Iowa Hawkeye legend. No, but underrated is one word. Unjustified? Maybe I don't know if that's a word, because how he's fired in Detroit was not great. And solid. I think that's the ones I would use. So obviously 3 winning seasons with the Detroit out of 4. He did have Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson, but that's still quite impressive. And then to get fired after that to go to the Matt Patricia era in Detroit, what a laughable turn of events for that Detroit franchise. The thing that holds me up about Jim Caldwell some is that he has been out of the league for 3-4 years, and how drastic offenses have changed. I mean, the usage of the RPOs, the type of defenses that we're seeing in today's NFL. I mean, just 3-4 years ago, everybody was playing static cover 3 and trying to be Gus Bradley and play cover 3 every damn snap until you got to your third down where you could play some cover 1 kind of stuff. And the NFL's gone away from that drastically. Teams are not doing that so much anymore. So I'm curious what his answers would be to what defenses are playing like today. But I think he's a very good coach, and he was done wrong getting fired after after Peyton Manning got injured and his quarterbacks were like Jim Sorgi and like Curtis Painter. No duh. And that team was actively tanking for Andrew Luck. Don't tell me otherwise. So I think that unjustified firing and an underrated coach. I'd be happy if he got a second interview. I think he deserves it.
I think it is for me, my initial thought is short term. Just based on age. It's like, listen, we've got a roster that we think can still win games. We want to, again, I mentioned that the getting the one player versus the 53. We want the guys we have. We want all 53 playing better. If you can do that in this window, great. You're our guy. Come in and give us 3 years, and you'll make $50 million.
Yep.
If it flops, we'll pay you off anyway. Thank you. And we'll say thank you, but this is the rebuild. We love him. We'll give you a member on the staff where you get to stay in and say, you're going to go into the front office with us, just to save face is the wrong word, but it's a short-term thing. And if it doesn't, we're going to blow the whole damn thing up. And we're going to do it with a coach that's 70 years old and put him in the front office to say thank you for coming in and being part of this project because we really respect you.
Yeah.
So for me, it just screams short term. We didn't get our guy. We swung big. We didn't get our guy, but we got a good guy for the short term until the right guy comes back around. And we will be respectful to Jim Caldwell and not Houston Texans the guy and fire him outright after 12 months. That's what I would hope and expect from this ownership when you've got the resources to do that.
Yeah, I agree. He'd be a fine coaching candidate. I put him in the same. I think it's Sean Payton's number one for me right now. I had Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton. Well, now Jim Harbaugh's out. Sean Payton stands alone on that tier. After that, if you wanted to really, sing praises for David Shaw, who I guess I'm higher on than you are, Scott. I've been always impressed with what David Shaw's done, which is fine. I think Dan Quinn's a quality candidate as well. I'd be fine with him. And then you have Jim Caldwell and DeMeco Ryans. I love DeMeco. I love the energy he brings. I like that he's a first-time head coach. I like he's only coached for 4 years. I don't care, honestly. As long as he can bring in a good staff around him, I think he's an ascending superstar level of coach. So I'd be fine with that. But any of those guys I listed, I'd be okay with. Raheem Morris, I'm going to be honest, I don't have as a good a feel on him. And also, he's very blitz happy and good with his pressure packages, but he's very cover 3 centric in his defenses, which I don't always love, but good candidate as well. And am I missing any? Oh, Jerry Rosburg. Also, the Broncos didn't have an official interview with Jerry Rosburg, but he, much like his press conferences, his quick meeting turned into a long meeting and somewhat of a pitch of a chance to maybe coach next year.
I'd say the same thing. If it's Jerry Rosburg, it's a 1-year deal. It just screams to me we missed on the guys we wanted.
We'll see you next cycle.
With Rosburg especially. But G. Spencer comes in. He says, a defensive coach to fix a quarterback with a confidence problem, that seems like a defeated approach. And Adam mentioned the same thing. Why bring in a defensive guy? I thought the whole idea was to fix Russ. The whole idea for me isn't to fix Russ, and I don't necessarily think he has to be broken. For me is who's the guy that can lead 53 and then bring in the right staff around him. So you still have an offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, new offensive line coach. You got a whole new offensive staff to come in to fix Russ. All of that would be better. I've got the general manager to come in and invest picks into the offensive line and free agents money into the interior offensive line. I've got a zillion ways to make this offensive better. I need somebody in charge that's going to make everybody better. If that's a defensive guy, so be it. If it's an offensive guy, so be it. Dan Quinn was a defensive guy in Atlanta who had awful defenses because the general manager didn't put any resources into the defense at all. They had fantastic offenses because all of the resources went into offense. I need some balance. I need the right guy in charge. Who's that going to be?
Yeah, obviously, fixing Russ and getting him playing well and confidence is big, but this head coaching hire is bigger than the current roster. And I would not sell it to any coach that you are 100% tied to Russell Wilson. Your fate is tied to Russell Wilson. If anyone's fate is tied to Russell Wilson, it's George Payton. But the new coach coming in, listen, if you get him right, God bless you. We'd love that. We made this investment and we have believe still quality or a chance to be a quality quarterback here. in Russell Wilson, even though he had a down year this year. But we think with the right coaching staff, building around him the way that he wins, he can still be a good enough quarterback to win in this league. And I think we saw flashes of that down the stretch with that more power-centric, play-action-centric vertical pass game where it's not, dropping back and throwing it 50 times, but rather, 20 to 30, somewhere between the lower end to the average of pass attempts. You can win that way with Russ. I still believe that. But you got to see it. We got to see it to believe it. Mark Lindemode coming in saying, what do you guys think about the S and the C guy? Is that being addressed? Is he talking about the safety and the center? I'm not sure exactly what
Strength
Mark's...
conditioning.
Duh. Okay. I would be shocked if the Broncos didn't bring in somebody new in that department. I'm guessing they probably also want to hear what these head coaches have on this as well, especially if this head coach brings in other people in the front office. But Broncos are definitely looking to, I know they've flew out and met with multiple people as far as the sports sciences, and it's something that I think they're going to address this offseason. I know that the Broncos' current strength and conditioning nutritionist guy is highly respected in terms of the overall sports, but Broncos results have been pretty poor. This is an area I've been advocating the Broncos ownership with their rich, where there's no limits on their money in terms of expenditures. Spend big on sports nutrition, health sciences, et cetera, get an advantage there and try to fix what's been ailing the Broncos these last few years with just a crazy amount of injuries.
And Mark, I think this happens after you get your coach. Okay. So you don't bring in the staff for the coach. I mean, again, a strength and conditioning staff can be independent of the coach. Let's start at the top and work our way down. So until you've got your coach in place, I'm not surprised that we're not hearing anything about the strength and conditioning right now because the focus is on the top. Mm-hmm. After that, work our way down, including strength and conditioning, and I expect there to be changes.
Yeah. We got Ryan Thompson saying, good morning, fellas in Broncos country. Good to see you, Ryan. Hope you're doing well. Happy Monday to you. Hope you have a great rest of your day. We have MPAC coming in saying, do you guys anticipate they'll conduct a second interviews for the top 3 candidates or possibly make an offer to Peyton on Wednesday? I could see it being, we don't hear about the next round of interviews until it gets there. And I'm not sure. I saw somebody make a comment about DeMeco Ryans not being able to interview this week because of the NFC Championship game. I don't know what the rules are as far as if he's not allowed because of that, or if he's denying them. I know that he also canceled 2 of his 4 interviews for head coaching so far. I think he had interviews lined up with the Colts and the Cardinals, and he rescinded those invites.
The Colts are up to 15 interviews. It's the Colts.
Oh, yeah.
The Colts are up to 15 interviews. At some point, I would say, yeah, I'm out. I don't blame him for that. And originally, DeMeco Ryans for me was, he still might be the guy. I know you were talking about Peyton, but Peyton the Colts were never linked with any of the big names, really. Not even Jim Harbaugh to a certain extent. Makes me wonder if it's just going to end up being Jeff Saturday. Go through a big 15 interview horse and pony show and just hire Saturday would be a very Jim Irsay thing to do.
That's exactly what I was going to say. We looked at all these candidates and we still thought Jeff Saturday was the best one. But I definitely think it's a possibility that the Broncos first meet Peyton, and if they get something done, then that's it. If not, then you'll see them announce it one by one. Maybe even they liked DeMeco Ryans enough that they draw it out and you don't hear about that third interview until further down the line. But we'll see what happens here. Haven't heard very much about how any of the interviews went, other than I heard that David Shaw's was impressive. And I also heard that Jim Caldwell impressed from a couple people that I talked with on the team. So Grant, that's hearsay, always will be, but is what it is.
I know Shaw has been a head coach at Stanford, but that's very, very different than being a head coach in the NFL. And if we're talking about first timers, again, to me, he's a first timer with limited NFL experience. That's one of the reasons I'm not as high on David Shaw as some of the others.
Yeah.
Again, people say, oh, well, Nick Saban flopped in the NFL and Steve Spurrier flopped in the NFL and these guys all flopped in the NFL. That's because these guys are egomaniacs and they're used to being in charge of every aspect. They're used to being worshipped like gods. I mean, a college guy can walk in and Nick Saban is like the governor of Alabama, maybe the South. He can do whatever he wants. Yeah. He goes into the program and says, I want this guy out. I want her out. I want her in. I want this one out. I want this change. It gets done. Mm-hmm. In the NFL, the guys can turn around and say, F you, I got a contract. And they're like, man, I'm out of here. I don't need this. He doesn't have head coaching experience. Raheem Morris does. Dan Quinn does. Jim Caldwell does. Those guys do when I'm talking about bringing in some of these other guys that I would have in before David Shaw. That's why I'm not as high on David Shaw.
Yeah, it seems like he's an intelligent guy, still extremely young as well. Also was in the NFL for a number of years. So it's not like he's only been brought up in the college game and then is jumping up. It's been a while.
Man. You just went through the changes that have happened in the 4 years since Jim Caldwell was a head coach. It's been like 20 years.
Yeah.
Since David Shaw was in the NFL. And we don't give these guys enough credit to adapt what they do. Well, he runs this. Well, they're football coaches. They're smart enough to see and make changes. Yeah.
And if not, then they're not going to be at their position very long.
Right.
Adapt or die. Tim Durr, morning, fellas. What's good, Broncos country? We're just hanging out. It's a good Monday. I think we're going to probably wrap up here pretty soon, but I want to talk a little bit of Daniel Jeremiah released his first mock draft 1.0, and happy to see a few Big Ten. I watch a lot of Big Ten West football. I know I'm a glutton for punishment, but happy to see Devon Witherspoon and Lucas Van Ness from Illinois and Iowa getting picked in the top 8. And the Broncos going in a direction that I've been hinting at for a bit, that they should definitely consider taking edge rusher BJ Ojulari from LSU. Yes, folks, I know the Broncos need to go with offensive line. You've heard me say it on here if you followed me at all, that the Broncos need to fix their offensive line as much as they can before the draft, because the way the draft is setting up this season, I'm not a big fan of any of the offensive linemen after the first 3 in terms of first-round caliber picks. We talked about it last week. Dane Brugler had the Broncos selecting Cyrus or Torrance, who very big, very strong at the point of attack. He can't move really all that well. And if you're trying to use a screen game or outside zone, he'd be a bad fit, in my opinion. Also, he's not, if you're taking a pure interior offensive lineman round 1, he better be David DeCastro kind of prospect to me, and he's not even close to that. So I was not a big fan of Cyrus or Torrance. The big 3, Peter Skoronski, Broderick Jones, and Paris Johnson Jr. If any of them are there and you have your first round pick, fine with me. After that, though, I'm not sinking any of my picks on first-round picks on an offensive lineman. That's the case here with Daniel Jeremiah. Again, he has BJ Ojulari going to the Broncos, edge rusher from LSU. He comes in and says about the pick, 29 overall, which is a possibility, says, first round is going to be heavy on edge rushers. Ojulari has a quick first step and active hands as a pass rusher. Broncos traded Bradley Chubb to Miami during the fall, and the LSU product would be a solid replacement. He's not a Bradley Chubb type, 1-for-1. He's honestly more of a twitchier, more versatile, much more refined Nick Bonito in terms of his play style, more length as well. But I wouldn't be against using the first round pick at edge rusher just because the Broncos pass rush fell off a cliff as the season progressed. And as you talked about in your last show, Scott, the Eagles have 70 sacks this year. It's not because they have a Myles Garrett. It's not because they have a TJ Watt. It's not because they have a Micah Parsons or a Nick Bosa. They have probably the deepest line in football and a lot of high invested resources on that unit. They can just rotate them constantly, throw waves at you. And I think that's a good way to be a good team in the NFL. And the teams that are left essentially have that on the NFC side of the ball.
They've got their leading sacker was an outside linebacker edge, but they're running a 4-3. And so if you take 16 sacks away that Hassan Reddick had, you still have 54 sacks, and almost all of those came from their front 4. If I can get 50 sacks from my front 4, you're in trouble. Yeah. You're in big trouble. And one of the questions was how many teams are still around that have, that had defensive minded head coaches. That's cyclical, and teams have always leaned towards offense anyway. You can always throw in one of the exceptions and Bill Belichick in there, to start evening up the Super Bowls as a defensive guy. Nick Saban was a defensive guy, but the 49ers and Eagles also have the 1 and 2 defense in the league, so you might have an offensive guy, but they're paying attention to the defense. Again, is it the right guy? And are you using your resources and hiring the right people around you? Now, y'all know me. I've said it before. The problem with a defensive guy is if your offensive guy is good, he's getting hired as a head coach because offensive guys get plucked a lot. That's staff turnover that can be tough. That is one of the reasons why you want to go offense. Right now, I don't know that you have that luxury with the Denver Broncos. You want to get good. Don't let great be in the way of being good right now. So you can get a good head coach on the defensive side of the ball. And again, Sean Payton's been my number 1 since we started this conversation. Yeah.
He definitely was your number 1. Also, real quick, I've been scrolling all the way to the top here, looking for the comment here. But our guy, Dave Glassman, one of the first comments of the day with the hearts and the thumbs up. It's Dave's birthday. So happy birthday to Dave, always coming in and supporting the show. Hope you're doing well, and hopefully you have an excellent birthday. But BJ Ojulari, Scott, some background on him. He's definitely has some work to do as far as setting the edge and could add some more power to his game. I don't think it's super comparable where when I watch Nick Bonito, it looks like he's a stand-up second-level linebacker trying to rush with how he runs. Ojulari at least gets some like bench press against some guys and some length and can, work different moves. He's much more refined with his pass rush technique. I think he's not as slippery as Bonito is, but I think he's got more bend and ankle flexion around that arc and just a better overall prospect. I mean, there's a reason that we're talking about him being a first round pick compared to Bonito's second, but I think he projects much better to the next level than Nick Bonito.
Well, and he'd be much farther ahead coming out of LSU than Oklahoma for what they can do and what they're facing day in and day out. That's no offense to Oklahoma; it's just a different style of football for now until Oklahoma gets in the SEC. You better be able to set an edge if you're going to play in the SEC West. That's for dang sure. So he's definitely got more experience. That 6'3", 250, that sounds familiar. Is that big enough? That's Vaughn. That's Von Miller, and he'll play bigger than that. He'll play 260 by the time he's done, assuming he weighs in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Come combine sign. And again, how do you not go offensive line there? If it's not the right offensive lineman, you don't go offensive line there. The worst thing you can do is reach. We've come back from the Senior Bowl and pegged several guys that could be contributors on the offensive line that ended up starting. We'll see if at tackle, no less. We'll see if we can do that again this year. Let's see. I'll be down there. What's today? Monday? So week from today, I'm heading down there and we'll see if we can find some of those guys. The Bernard Raymond, Spencer Brown was the year before. Braxton Jones, Abraham Lucas. There's 4 off the top of my head that ended up being pretty good tackles, third round and beyond. Don't reach. That's the worst thing you can do is reach.
Yeah, and I know if there was guys there that I thought were quality candidates, I'd be okay with it. I just don't see it this year. We'll have to have a conversation about Darnell Wright, who I think is going to be down there, and Anton Harrison, who won't be down there. Another name to keep an eye on down there is Blake Freeland from BYU. I wonder if he's too tall. He doesn't really have good knee bend when he plays, and I'm thinking leverage is going to be a huge issue for him, given he's 6'8", 6'9". But Michael Ronquillo says, great show today, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Go you, Michael. We appreciate you coming in. Real quick, though, BJ Ojulari, one last thing here, and it's one of my favorite traditions one of my favorite little kind of insider baseball traditions in college football. He was voted the number 18 player on that LSU team. And for those of you that don't know, LSU's players vote for a player who shows exemplary character, work ethic, leadership on either side of the ball, and votes them for both on and off the field to earn that number 18 jersey. And he was voted that number 18 guy. So you're getting a guy with high character, high work ethic. I think that raises the floor of him as a selection as well. So a guy who's very well, highly thought of in that LSU team.
Yeah, you could use some leaders coming in to refresh that bunch. Pat Surtain, let's look at the last 2 draft classes since we've done that. Where are your leaders in that group? Pat Surtain is a quiet type, leads by example. But who's going to be your leader type moving forward? Justin Simmons is getting older. I think he's pretty much unquestioned vocal leader on the team, but he is getting older. So I think that's a good shout. I did not know that about him. String Guy coming in talking about Devon Weatherspoon. He says, I live near University of Illinois. Seen him several times. He's a big reason the Illini ID was very good. Impressive cornerback. He will go very high in the first round. Yeah, String Guy, I think if you want to talk to Devon Weatherspoon, you probably want to join us Wednesday mornings on Nick and I's new Coast to Coast football pod, because he'll probably he may go top 10. Top 15 for sure.
Yeah.
Very, very good player. That's a good shout.
Yeah, I'm guessing he'll be my cornerback too, because he doesn't have the size and length that I'm looking for a pure boundary corner. But man, he's the number 1 cornerback in terms of tenacity and the all bark team. And that guy, he likes to jaw.
We look at those stats and is he like a Roger McCreary plus? Roger McCreary was out of Auburn, had dinosaur arms, really short arms.
He's bigger.
Very good player this year. He's a good player. Now, do I go that high based on the measurables? He's so good in other aspects of the game that you're willing to overlook some of the minuses. Seems like we're saying that about a lot of players in this draft, Nick.
Yeah, it's a fine draft class, but it's definitely not a special draft class, especially after you drop off Will Anderson and Jalen Carter in the top quarterbacks. But we'll see. Yeah, I think the comp that I've heard tossed around with him, and I think even Daniel Jeremiah mentioned it when he mocked him number 6 overall, was Jair Alexander, probably one of the more twitched up cornerbacks in football. A little bit smaller, but can play inside, outside, and just super explosive. That's who I see when I see Witherspoon as well. DWI guys coming in at 50 pounds. Thank you so much. Saying a cornerback I liked last year was Cam Taylor-Britt. He balled yesterday. Great show, Jensen, Broncos country. I think I mocked him to the Broncos in my one and only mock draft last season to the Broncos at pick 64. He ended up going pick 60. Have it on pretty good authority. From Nebraska.
Yeah,
yep,
okay.
Very physical.
I remember him. I didn't scout him nearly as much as you did.
I was a big fan.
But I remember you like holding your nose and making that pick because he's a Cornhusker.
Yeah. Yeah. Good players are good players. And once he can graduate, evolve beyond the shuck, if you will, beyond the shell. Thank you so much, Ethan, coming in. 50 pounds. That means a lot for us. And we're going to wrap it on up here. Obviously, keep covering the coaching surf. The big news that coming out here, Sean Payton's going to interview with the Broncos on Wednesday. So we'll see for that second interview. We'll see if it goes beyond that. And God, we're all just waiting for this coaching search to end so that way we can move on to better and brighter things. Good weekend of football as well. We'll see what happens with everybody. Go Bengals, who dat or who day, whatever they say.
It's who day. The who dats are a little south of there.
Yeah, much. Although Cincinnati is kind of south. Ohio drips down a bit. But maybe not for you, but for me
South
up here.
Ohio, not
yeah. They're Kentucky
south
essentially.
Of the who days. Yeah. The who days are in Cincinnati. the who dats are in New Orleans.
Yeah, heck of a team. And real quick, Scott, I just want to put you on the spotlight or a spot here. So we had the Bengals offensive line absolutely take it to the Bills in this game. Now, I know it was a snow game, and you can kind of throw out some of the tape sometimes when the fields are like that because the traction, the footing is weird. But Bengals defense took it to the Bills team that we saw in the Broncos against preseason. They just beat the absolute hell out of the Broncos. Deep, strong, versatile defensive line. The Bengals did that with 3 backup offensive linemen. Is there any lesson that we can take from this from what the Bengals did this week and apply it to the Broncos and just team building in general? Because that was not a lot of first round picks or highly invested guys, but as a unit, they played great and the system was great and the quarterback helped the ball. I think Joe Burrow had I read a stat. It was like one of the quickest time to release that we've seen in the playoffs in like 5 years.
The lesson there, and Tony Romo brought it up several times, is how do you protect young offensive linemen? What would they rather do? Pass block or run block?
Run block.
Run block. So how do you protect them? These guys made it in the NFL because they were good offensive linemen at some point in their career. And you protect young offensive linemen by just going right at somebody, just going right at them. And the Bengals did. And the conditions helped. The conditions help with that. So play into the strengths. And then if you've got them off balance in the least, you got Joe Burrow, you got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins, and you've got all those guys. But the base of that offense to get started was just run it right at them, which is, we talk about scheme, schmeme, inside zone, outside zone, all this kind of stuff. And I chuck it out the window. And the reason why is because I want to break it down to basics. And the basics are, if I cannot win at the point of attack, I cannot win. The Broncos have been getting beat at the point of attack. Period. Reisner has gotten beat at the point of attack. Cushenberry at the point of attack. Glasgow, better, but not good enough. He can't get out of, he can't get to the point of attack. Mm-hmm. That's 3 of your 5 right up the gut. Those should be fairly easy to improve on. And keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple. Run it right down their damn throats. Run it right at them and then work off of that. Now, again, the Bengals are a far cry from most teams because the things that they can do on the perimeter. But how do you protect a young offensive line? How do you protect an experienced offensive line? Run the damn ball.
Yep. You are 100% correct in that. Running the ball, for sure. I would add to this, and you did hint at it a bit, is that the personnel on the boundary helps a lot because what's going to happen?
Things out,
and
without a doubt.
Empties things out too against 2 high safety shells, which the Bills did this year a lot, which I agree with is the way to go. But that means that you have to sometimes flex a little bit with the personnel up front. So again, just some of the bigger questions that we have out here. Best, what can we take home from what we're learning from these teams? running the football is back for sure. It's never really went away, but now that the cover 3 defenses have gone away a bit, where you have way more bodies in run fits in the box, how do you beat teams out of these cover 2 shells? It is. Yep.
It's cyclical. What never goes out of style is big and fast.
Yep. And winning your matchup. So comes down to that in the end, but absolutely.
Trenches. I texted that to Nick yesterday as I was watching, Cincinnati win in the trenches against Buffalo. They both have weapons. You got Stephon Diggs, you got Jamar Chase, you got Josh Allen, you got Joe Burrow. Where was that game decided? The priests like to say coaching. For us, it's trenches. If you win in the trenches, everything else becomes a lot easier.
With the caveat that if you have guys in the perimeter, it can make your job in the trenches a lot easier. And we're going to find that out.
There's synergy there.
Yeah, 100%. And we're going to find that out this week with the trenches of the Eagles, much better on the defensive line and the offensive line than, I guess, the 49ers defensive line is incredible too. I'm talking about the Eagles defensive line versus the 49ers offensive line. But how much easier is that job for that offensive line going to be that you have Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, because of the type of defenses, how you dictate defenses and the spacing there. So love it, man. Football is so great. It's the ultimate team game, the ultimate chess match. In the end, it is about winning your matchup, doing your damn job. But everything that goes in there is beautiful. It's so much fun to watch. And we appreciate you guys coming in and letting Scott and I, just kind of talk through some of this. It's always fun to get into the peel back that onion and figure out, okay, we saw what happened. Why did it happen? What are the greater and bigger implications for how things played out? So appreciate you guys so much. Make sure you guys are following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott, can you?
70. Do you guys see Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
Yeah.
I love the end. At the end, he's like, ask us the sex question. That's how I feel like this. 70 sacks. 70.
Insane.
Can you even imagine watching a team that got 70 sacks on a daily basis?
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did the Broncos finish this year? 30?
It fell off a cliff after they traded Chubb and then they lost.
Maybe, we watched the Falcons and the Broncos every game, Nick and I. Falcons had 21. That's up from 18 the year before. The Broncos, you have to look it up, but it's probably in the mid 30s, maybe combined. You're knocking on the door of half. 70 sacks. Where was Vic Fangio this year? Collecting his Broncos severance, and he was a defensive consultant for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Good gig if you can get it. Appreciate you guys so much. You have a great rest of your Monday. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod and at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us at Facebook at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. We still got a lot of viewers in here. Click the thumbs up on the way out the door. Hopefully we earned it from you guys. We appreciate you. Follow us on Facebook, like I said, and subscribe, like, and share over on YouTube. Click those thumbs up on there. Hit that bell so that way you know when we go live. And yeah, you guys have a great rest of Monday. Any thoughts on before we get on out of here, Scott? Anything you want to end on?
No, we'll see your football priests tonight at 6 Central. Zach and Chad will be back, and Nick and I will be back tomorrow. Hopefully you get some more news leaking out. And again, it was a little quiet the last 4 days, but still plenty to talk about, of course. So appreciate everybody being here. Love you guys.
Yeah, you guys have a great one. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. And as always, go Broncos.